Hi, everyone. It's Jonathan. It's 2025. And while the administration I was hoping would win decidedly did not win, we are going to grow this year. We are going to evolve. We are going to keep reaching for the stars, and we're going to keep trying to make the world we want to see. With that being said, I've got an announcement. I'm going to do a little Queer Eye makeover on Getting Curious. After 10 years, I'm rebranding, retitling my podcast from Getting Curious to Getting Better with Jonathan Van Ness. So today we usher in a whole new era of the podcast. I spent the last 10 years almost hosting Getting Curious, and I have learned so much. I think so many people, though, in 2025, a lot of us are feeling a little hopeless, maybe a little bit doomed, a little bit frustrated, isolated, lonely, and not hopeful for the future. And I know that with what I've learned, we can grow together, we can get better. And honey, that's why we are calling it Getting Better with Jonathan Van Ness. So just like we used to, every week I'm going to dive into a topic that I'm curious about. Except for now, we're going to be a little bit more focused. Each week I'll be learning about health, mental health, society, culture, maybe sometimes a little history, but ultimately it's about growth. It's about how we can realize the best versions of ourselves, how we can connect, how we can heal, and ultimately how we can continue to get better. Because honey, it's a lot out here, and I want us to be able to grow, heal, and get better together. So life is challenging, healing is messy, so are we. And Queen, you came to the right place. Welcome to Getting Better. Every Wednesday on YouTube, we'll have our new Monday episodes, the Monday Edit, which will not be on YouTube, but they will be wherever you download your podcasts. And maybe Sunday we will put them on YouTube for all we know. So watch out. We've got new podcast, new YouTube, still the same old me, still the same old fun. But honey, we're healing. Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan Van Ness, and welcome to Getting Better. Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty person? Optimism. We all have a relationship with it, but some of us are more connected to it than others. But can optimism help us live a better life? Our daily grind can feel overwhelming, honey. How can we shift our mindset to see the possibilities rather than the pitfalls? What if optimism is not just about looking on the bright side, but actually using optimism as a tool for healing, self-care, and getting things done? I don't know about you, but some days it really does feel easier for me to reach for the doom, the gloom, like what could happen if, and it's like a negative thought. In fact, the other day I was saying to my husband, what if this thing happens? And he was like, why did your brain go automatically to the worst thing that could happen there versus like, maybe it'll be an amazing experience? And I was like, am I not as optimistic as I thought? Am I having an issue connecting to my optimism? So I am curious about that, want to work on it. Is optimism a personality trait, or is it a skill that we can build? Like, what if optimism is that secret sauce for feeling good while doing all the things that adulthood throws at us? Also, where does optimism turn into toxic positivity? Because I feel like I've heard that and I've been called that before. So I'm like, what is that? And because I don't want to be so optimistic that I get the toxic positivity. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. And we have a dear friend of the pod and someone I'm so excited that I just got to meet in real life for the first time to talk all about it. Gretchen Rubin, honey. Now, Gretchen, I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro right now. Ready? But say hi. Say hi to the peeps.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Me too, honey. And we got to meet at the beginning of 2024 virtually, but now we get to meet in person for the first time, which feels so good.
So much better.
You're the best.
So are you.
You guys, new segment, Shoe Cam. This won't be all the time, but when our guest has especially cute shoes or I have especially cute shoes, we feel it's important for us, because we are getting better and healing, to show us our shoes. So we got the red bottoms over here on Gretchen, and these are gorgeous Schulz shoe, Schulz. So let's just talk a little bit about you really quick. So it's not going to be really quick because I'm obsessed with her work. And if you don't know about her, you're going to know now. Joining us today is someone who knows a thing or two about mindset, happiness, and making adulthood work. The one, the only Gretchen Rubin. You probably know her from the Happiness Project, Better Than Before, and her upcoming book, Secrets of Adulthood, which is out on April 1st. And today we're asking, how can optimism help us live a better life? Gretchen, hi.
Hello, I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Honey, so this is your, this is going to be your
10th book.
It's not even a junior or a senior. It's like a Super 10 doctorate
I know, I'm
book.
on 2 hands. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So first, let's explore the problem. Let's lay the groundwork for this. Are we going through an optimism drought? Are people going through an optimism? You're like, yes.
Yeah.
So you have spent so much time studying happiness, habits, and what makes life more fulfilling. Where does optimism fit into our happiness and our ability to feel more fulfilled?
So optimism is the belief that good things can happen in the future. And what the research shows is that when people are more optimistic, they tend to be happier and healthier, more productive. They have better habits. They tend to have better relationships with other people because that optimistic energy is attractive to people. And so there's a lot of advantages to being optimistic. But it's like anything, it's a little hard sometimes to just make yourself be optimistic because it feels like a mindset or just like the way your mind is working rather than an action. So that's why I think that's where the tricky part is for a lot of people.
There was this video I was watching on my neurodivergence went in like 19 different ways, but I'm curious but in the AIDS crisis, there was this phrase, and I'm going to mess it up, but it was like the early 90s, and these men would say that they would spend their mornings burying their friends, then they would spend the afternoons doing activism, and then they would dance all night.
Yeah.
And it was the dancing all night that kept them going because that's almost like a version of optimism. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't have something to look forward to or to be excited about, why keep going?
How can you keep going? But also doing the activism. I mean, one thing about when you're feeling optimistic or pessimistic, a lot of times a way to feel more optimistic is to take action.
Yes.
You know, action is an antidote for anxiety. And if you feel yourself trying to make a change, being part of what the change you want to see, it's like be the change you want to see in the world. It really works because then you see that there is work for change and that there are people who share your values and are working towards them. And so that playing a role. And then we feel less powerless and sidelined when we're doing something active. So we're taking part.
So I think what I was trying to ask kind of earlier, which I said it in a way more wordier, like about me, shocker way, but it's like there is some people I think associate optimism with being naive or ignoring reality.
Right.
So I think I was trying to say like, you know, does it make me seem like I'm not aware if I'm being happy or
Or you have to preface everything you say with like, just to stipulate that I realize that, you know, it is. Because we're all comparing, everything is happening all at once. We're so much more aware of that than we used to be. And that's hard to manage.
I almost even feel I'm going to call myself out. Sometimes it's like, I almost feel like it's about like, look at what I know.
But I think people love to teach and they love to correct.
Yes.
So I think some people are just like always on the lookout. And they feel like they're maybe making the world a better place, but they're actually, to you, it feels like it makes you feel, makes you feel defensive and like, oh, I put my foot wrong, and yet I was trying so hard to like, So it's just social media is just something that humankind has never faced before, and it's just putting us in all these situations that.
Sidebar, I have gotten a lot better about
Have you? Because
the
last time we talked, you were working on managing your social media. I wanted to ask you about that.
I really have gotten better.
So that's probably part of why this year has been like a turnaround for you.
It has been. And then also I got to say, shout out to that Mel Robbins, honey.
Yeah.
That whole like realizing like that you need to let people think what they're going to think.
Yeah.
You cannot control what other people are going to think. And that also gave me a lot more freedom to like not manage the comments, be in the comments. It's like, I also try to now, unless someone's really said something weird, I try to engage in positive comments, not negative.
Oh, because you don't want to reinforce the negativity.
When I'm already, like, look at me, like, accidentally engaging in optimism.
Yeah, I know. There you go. See, there you go.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, you know, I always say to myself, a strong voice repels as well as attracts. And you have a very strong voice.
That's true.
And that's part of what is, like, what attracts people to you.
And also what makes people feel really repulsed by my voice sometimes, but that's okay.
The tourist slogan for Nebraska for a while was, honestly, it's not for everyone.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You in Nebraska.
You do seem like an innately optimistic person. Like, have you ever struggled with optimism in your own life or accessing your own optimism or your own joy? And how did you deal with it?
Yeah, the way I deal with it is through action, because I feel like that always makes me feel better if I'm taking action. And other things, I just really work on the foundations, like getting enough exercise, getting enough sleep, because I feel like for me, I'm super physically sensitive. And often when I feel overwhelmed or hopeless, it's because I just haven't had enough sleep. I am a person who says it will look better in the morning. If I'm really stressed out, I might go to bed at like 7:45 because I just need to get some sleep and wake up the next morning. And so a lot of times that's one way I manage it, is just like, going outside, getting sunlight in my face, playing with my dog, really trying. That's part of how I try to manage it myself.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't have to be like this big, profound, like, it's like getting outside, getting outside, moving your body, connecting with someone that you love or something that you love.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be like lighting candles and like clearing out, an hour from your schedule to like make time for happiness. It's like little things.
And also I think that sometimes like when you're trying to change like your mindset, that feels very abstract and vague, and like how do you even get your hands around that? So I think it's much easier to think about your conscious actions. And so what are the kinds of things that you would do that make you feel more optimistic? It's like, I get enough sleep, I connect with my friends, I go to group Pilates, I volunteer to register people to vote, I donate to causes that I believe in, whatever it might be. And that action helps you have the feeling, inspires you with that feeling of optimism, more than just kind of trying to sit there and feel more optimistic, which I wouldn't even know how to do that.
Can we do like an acting thing, and I need you to be my optimism coach, and I'm going to be like a negative Nancy online?
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Okay.
So you just had said like, sometimes you got to take action and do something that will make you feel more optimistic. This is like a mindset exercise.
Okay.
I'm someone who's struggling with the mindset, and I'm like, well, Gretchen, I don't know what taking action looks like for me to feel happier. Like that feels ableist because I just feel really depressed and really in my mental illness, and I don't know what makes me feel happier.
Well, I would say start with relationships, because ancient philosophers and contemporary scientists agree that's a key to happiness, maybe the key. So if you're going to start with one thing, just like reach out to someone in your life. Could be an old friend, could be somebody new, could be a family member. Find a way to connect. Make a plan, get on the phone, even just text them a funny picture of your dog. And that is something that will make you feel happier. This is tied to something called self-efficacy, which is your belief that you have the power to make things happen better in the future. So optimism is sort of the future itself can be better, and self-efficacy is like, I can make change for the better. And so they're very connected, but sometimes by connecting with your self-efficacy, then you can have sort of more general optimism, because they are sort of tied.
I love what you just said. And the reason that I prompted that like acting kind of thing is I was just imagining someone listening to this, if they are really suffering from, we just got to cover trauma with James Longman a couple weeks ago, and his new book, The Inherited Mind. It's incredible. But I was just thinking about if someone's like really in their mental illness and that they have, real depression, like, and not that some depression's real and some's fake, but they really
deep depression, profound depression,
severe depression. And they're like, well, how can I take action? Like, I can't even get out of bed. Like, it's just so bad. But it's like, taking action can be like a text. It can be it can be like a smaller thing. It doesn't have to be like curing your depression. It can be like reaching out to a friend, like rolling out of bed and just like army crawling to the bathroom to brush your teeth. And that can be a win that can lead you towards some amount of healing, a little bit more optimism. It doesn't have to be these like absolute grand gestures. They can be smaller things, and those still get to be wins.
And they do build on each other. I mean, severe depression is like its own beast. And I always think of severe depression as being different from sort of what I would call ordinary unhappiness. They're different. Like, I remember a friend of mine said, I'm a very happy person who suffers from depression. And I was like, oh, I totally get that. So it's confusing. But yes, even small steps can help.
I mean, these days, though, between it's 2020, it's 2025, and I don't know how that happened. It all happened so fast. It is true when they say like the older you get, the faster time goes. Like that really is a thing. But with the stress, deadlines, burnout, work pressure, family pressure, so many of us are struggling with like, why does optimism even matter? Like, does it make a difference?
It does. So then that's what research shows, is that people who are more optimistic really are happier, healthier, and they're more inclined to do things to help them in the future. It makes them more resilient, gives you that determination, because if you're going to work on goals or if you're going to work towards the future, you sort of have to believe in the hope of the future. And so
what about with like parenting and like relationships? Like, how do you think that we can bring more optimism into like because I'm just thinking like, I see a lot of parents. I obviously have my children are 5 cats and 3 dogs.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of parents really overwhelmed, maybe not super optimistic about a whole bunch of things.
Yes.
And how does that impact like relationships? I'm just thinking we have a lot of parents that listen, I would imagine. And even people who maybe they're not parents, but friendships, relationships, like how can optimism impact our relationships?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing to remember is like people are resilient. Like change is constant. There's been massive changes throughout human culture and society, and people are resilient. And so instead of, I think, catastrophizing, which is like imagine, like you were talking about earlier, what's the worst thing that can happen and there's nothing we can do about it, just say, well, we'll get there when we get there, and like let's control what we can control and do the things that we know are helpful to us now, and not worry about obviously like for policy issues, you have to think about the future in that way. But even to think about, well, how could we make change that would lead us to a better future? That's something that we would be doing now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
or
true.
like, parents who have like a 7th grader who are like, what is my child going to do for a living when they grow up? It's like, that's a long way away. There's a lot you don't know. Like, don't be pessimistic about it now.
Yeah.
Because a lot's going to change.
Also, this is just coming up for me. We were learning about trust a few weeks ago.
Tricky.
Right. And I was kind of saying how like, I used to be someone who like any new person who I met, you started with a 100%. Like I was like ultra
so you're very open-hearted,
delusionally optimistic.
Yeah.
Then I feel like I got burned a few times and I like went to like 0. Like everyone starting with a 0.
Yes.
Then I finally realized like something more fair feels like being more like around 50, give everybody a C and then they're going to just,
right.
we're going to like
look out for the red flags or the green flags.
Exactly.
Right.
So
right.
what do you think the relationship between like optimism and trust is?
That is such an interesting question. I never thought about connecting those, but absolutely. I mean, I think that they're extremely tied, because I think someone who has a lot of basic trust is going to feel more optimistic, because they're going to feel like people are basically good. I can basically count on people to keep their word and not to be cruel or arbitrary or backstabby. And so you would feel more optimistic about the future, your future in particular, but then I'll probably also you would extrapolate that from about sort of society. Whereas people who have lower trust are like, people betray you, people cheat, people are only out for themselves, they don't care about you, you've got to watch your back. Like that's going to lead you to a more pessimistic place, because you're like, I have to protect what's mine. Why would I build in the future? Why would I contribute to systems that aren't necessarily to my good? So I have never, ever before tied those things, but I imagine that they are extremely tied, because trust gives you a feeling of optimism because it's about the future.
It also reminds me kind of like faith, because it's like if you've been hurt or if you've trusted someone and you ended up getting hurt, it might make you more pessimistic, but it's like, it's ultimately about like faith that you can heal, faith in people, like trust in other people.
But that is another way of saying, well, in that context, faith is kind of optimism. My faith that I can heal is I am optimistic that I can get through this and get to the place that I want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think, especially on like the podcast, like I've learned so much about misinformation and disinformation. And we know that like, I can't remember which one is which, but I know that when you get exposed to information for the first time, your brain just always will think that's true, even if it wasn't true. Mm-hmm. And so just having faith that people can change their beliefs, people can learn new ways, people can be exposed to information, like they can relearn or unlearn. Like we can have faith in each other.
Change is possible. We can have faith with each other.
Even if we've been let down. But it's like, if we don't think that, then like, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. A friend of mine wrote a book about Anne Frank, and she was saying how she quoted somewhere Anne Frank made a very famous statement that like, I believe that people are fundamentally good.
Yes.
And somebody's like, how can you possibly say that? Look around the world. That's not true. And she's like, I have to believe that's true. And who more than Anne Frank can say that?
Yeah. It's like, people are good. They're also like, people, they are good.
But we are all fallible.
Yes. And it's like,
and we're all limited in our own ways.
It's so true.
Can we just,
we're fallible.
Yeah, grope towards
naughty,
a better
little tendencies towards like corruption and greed sometimes, but we all Yeah. Whatever. Every villain has an origin story. It's true.
It is true.
So, okay, this is another one. So I have some people in my life who I think of when I ask this next question. What do we lose when we get stuck in negativity? And what's the psychological and emotional impact of being stuck in negativity?
Well, for one, just like having people in your life who are very negative, emotions are very catching. It's literally called like emotional contagion because we infect each other with our emotions. And so people who are very negative and very pessimistic, like that often kind of repels other people because it's a very draining kind of energy to be around. And so that's not good. Like if you're sort of turning people off instead of like drawing them to you. And also like if you have that feeling that you don't have self-efficacy, you don't feel like, well, it doesn't, why would I bother to go to a Pilates class? It's not going to make any difference. Why would I I don't want to change my eating habits. It's too much trouble. I deserve to eat what I want. I'm so stressed out. Like, it's not going to make any difference. I failed before. What's the point?
Yeah.
Well, then you're not going to be able to do the things that would actually benefit you and benefit the world around you, the people around you, and also the larger world around you. And so it gets you in this really negative spiral where everything seems pointless. So why do it? But then because you don't do it, you don't get any of the lift that comes from doing all the things that we can do to make ourselves happy.
In your work, have you ever seen someone who was really chronically unhappy, negative, super depressed, and then started making these changes in terms of investing in their optimism, spending more time on cultivating optimism, and it made a huge difference in their life?
1,000%. And I think that's one of the most beautiful and exciting things about human nature is like people really can change. They really can change their lives and make their lives better. I mean, I remember, I have my 4 tendencies framework that divides people into 4 categories.
Yes.
Upholders, questioners, obligers, and rebels. So what obligers need, if they're going to keep an inner expectation, is they need a form of outer accountability. So somebody I remember talking to just realized, if I just give myself outer accountability, then I can do things like get enough sleep, get exercise, stop yelling at my kids.
What's outer accountability mean again? I'm sorry.
Outer accountability is like a deadline or like a friend is expecting you to show up. Just something on the outside of you, like enforcing. It's not just like you wanting to keep a New Year's resolution to yourself.
Yes.
Like there's some form of outer accountability. Because she just didn't realize that she needed that outer accountability. She kept just saying to herself, I should be motivated. If it's important to me, I should be able to do it. Nobody else needs a coach or I should just be able to get up and go for a run in the morning myself. Why do I need to take a class? Why do I need to go to a meditation class?
Maybe I needed it. Is that why I feel better when I go to a class?
Probably
a
lot of people love the outer accountability because they feel like, oh, well, people are expecting me to show up and my teacher's expecting me to show up or I paid. So I want to get my money's worth.
Yeah, I get that too with my little monthly membership at Solid Core. I'm like, ooh, I want my $400. I'm going to go every day.
I know, right? Or they charge you if you don't show up too.
Yeah.
Or for some people, there's a wait list. So if you sign up and don't come, then you've sort of taken somebody else's place. And
can I just say, Solid Core people, if you're signed up for one of those first 13 to 16 classes and you don't fucking show up, I just think that is so rude, okay? Because I have to get up at 5 in the morning to go to the 5 a.m. class when my body really wanted 7 a.m. And from what we've learned about sleep, that last hour or two is really important.
Really important.
Know? It is.
Right, but so that's a form of accountability. So somebody's like, well, I've got to go to that 7 a.m. class because otherwise...
You just made me get up at 5.
Jonathan Van Ness got up at 5 o'clock for no good reason. I feel terrible about that. So anyway, sometimes it's just that little insight into your own nature can sort of unlock a lot of change. Or sometimes somebody starts doing one thing, like you had your group Pilates, it's like somehow, or you get back into playing the guitar and then it's like, oh, I'm reconnecting with this pleasure. And now I'm listening to new music and now I'm going to concerts and now I've started a little neighborhood band and it's so fun and now I play with my kid. It can take you into a really positive path. But you mentioned toxic positivity. I don't want to make it sound like everything is easily solved and if we would all just sign up for a group exercise class, all would be well in the world. I don't want to be flippant or shallow. But it is true that sometimes just a very small change can have these extremely large ripple effects for people. And so it's just not a Hollywood conceit.
Yeah.
I talk to people all the time because I love hearing what started it? What was the first, the little snowball that
I'm sure a lot of people it is physical activity, but I remember times I still to this day, recently with the wildfires that were in LA, like I was feeling disconnected. I was feeling like sad. I also felt really powerless because I wasn't there, and like, how was I going to help? And so the first thing we did is like, I went through like all my house and I got like all the brand new stuff that like I've never used. It was just like nice, not crappy, but like nice, brand new, like nice stuff. So I boxed that up. Then once I realized that they were like full of donations and got things done, then I like reached out to a few brands to try to do a little bit of this and a little, and that the volunteering thing,
that's the action
that made me feel like as good as like after Pilates, but different.
Right.
It was like a different place in my brain.
Right.
So like, well, is that like a...
No, that's taking action. So you're taking
like being
action.
In community.
Yes, right. And trying to make things better, you know. And then there's also the gratitude piece of it, because that's another thing that makes us more optimistic. If you think about, well, I can be grateful for the fact that local news did a really great job of keeping everybody informed. I can be grateful for all of the firefighters who like fought throughout the night to save a lot of neighborhoods. I can feel grateful that, you know, my best friend's house is still standing or whatever. But anyway, gratitude is also can be really useful as we're trying to think about cultivating optimism, because it focuses our attention on what's good and what's working.
Also, as long as my neurodivergence is going, your posture is so inspiring.
Oh, good.
And like, no, your posture is like giving me like on several occasions today, sitting next to you, I've been like, I need to get my back straight and these shoulders back, because you're giving me solid core Pilates,
but this
honey.
is just for you. I have to say, if I were like at home in my desk, I would be
keep
slumping.
wanting to like, I keep wanting to get all like comfy and like read my question.
No, I'm bringing my A game to you.
I love it, honey. You're giving me mine too. Okay, so
a resolution for both of us for 2025.
I said something online the other day. I can't remember what I was talking about, but I said something, and this lady, I really wish I could remember, but this lady was like, that's the definition of toxic positivity.
Oh.
And I remember thinking like,
oh, I wonder what you said.
I know. Now I'm really trying to remember, but it was something that like I'm pretty sure wasn't toxically positive.
Right.
Like it was one of those things about like, you can feel your feelings. We can trust that we can feel our feelings and like get through to the other side of something.
Right.
I think it was something around that.
Right.
May have been something political with that bend to it, but it was basically trying to say like, we probably need to advocate within this framework and like do our best, and it's messy, but like, you know, hopefully we can keep getting better. Oh, I think it was my affirmation about like, we're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep working together. Like, I believe it was like the day after the election. And someone was like, that's the definition of toxic positivity.
Oh.
So what is the difference between like optimism? Like do you have a definition for toxic positivity, like off the top of your head?
I feel like toxic positivity is one, for me, when I use it, I think of it as when people kind of blame you or hold you responsible if something bad happens or you're feeling bad. So like toxic positivity would be like, well, yeah, you've got cancer, but if you just have positive thoughts, like you can turn that around. So it's sort of saying like, you're responsible. Like if you can fix it, then it's your fault too. Like that's the two sides of it. And that's where I feel like it gets toxic, or you just need to have a better frame of mind and like denying people's negative emotions. Because what you were saying there didn't sound like you were denying it. It was like, now given this, how do we move forward? Which to me isn't toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is, you know, everything's always for the best. Everything always works out. If you don't agree, there's something wrong with you.
Or like Roe's not a big deal because it just went back to states' rights. Like saying that to someone who lives in Texas. That would be toxically positive.
Right. Just saying like, oh yeah, you don't need to worry about this. Your concerns are illegitimate.
Yes.
And so it's the denial of, but I think you can acknowledge like you're right. Climate change is a really big deal. It's really, really scary. And yet there are things that we can do.
100%.
That doesn't, to me, feel like toxic positivity. Toxic positivity would be like, don't worry about it. It's all going to work out. We've always solved these problems in the past. Well, this is going to get solved. Like, we don't need to worry about it. I'm like, really?
There has to be a gray area. It's not always like optimistic or pessimistic. What would you say about like, what if someone had gone through something bad, gone through something that was difficult? What about like feeling your pessimism for a moment, or like feeling the negative feeling? Like, is that ever part of it?
No, absolutely. And the thing is, like, being happy doesn't mean not experiencing negative emotions. Like, negative emotions play a really important role in a happy life. So things like anger, envy, resentment, boredom, frustration, sadness, they all are really important. So you want to acknowledge them. But a lot of times they can become overwhelming. And so that's when you want to figure out, like, do I need to get help from the outside? Are there things that I can do within my own life that can help me, like, move forward with this information? Because it's valuable information. If you envy somebody, why do you envy them? Maybe they have something that you could get for yourself. Or if you're angry at somebody, like, what are they trespassing against you? Like, maybe you need to get a different job or whatever. So it isn't like just sweep it. That's when it becomes toxic, when it's like negative things are illegitimate. You need to push them away, only focus on the good. That's not a good life. But it's when they starts to feel overwhelming, or you get into that negative spiral that you were mentioning earlier, where people are just, it's alienating other people, and it's making you feel like you're stuck in a bad place.
Like, if you're naturally more pessimistic or depressed, or just you don't have that, this might be okay voice.
Yeah.
Do you just have to, like, fucking will it?
Yeah.
Like, do you just, like, force your brain to say it? Is it a fake it till you make it? Or is there, like, a different technique?
Well, fake it till you make it, there really is a lot of research about fake it till you make it. Like, a lot of times we think that we act because of the way we feel, but actually we feel because of the way we act. So if you're yelling and slamming doors.
Will you say that again?
We think that we act because of the way we feel. But in fact, a lot of times we feel because of the way we act. So it's more like your brain is saying, wow, I'm yelling and slamming doors. There must be anger there. And you can sort of manipulate that, manipulate yourself by, like, I feel shy, but I'm going to act friendly. Or I feel really sluggish, but I'm going to act energetic. I'm going to walk faster. I'm going to talk faster. I'm going to, like, run up and down the stairs. That will give you a feeling of energy. They've done studies showing that if you have people, like, artificially, like, raise the corners of their lips, they'll feel happier because they're smiling. So there's this big feedback. So I think a lot of times there is a fake it till you feel it. Like, act the way you wish you felt, and the feelings can follow to a kind of uncanny degree. It really does. And sometimes people are uncomfortable with that because they feel like they're manipulating themselves, or they're being inauthentic because they're not acting the way they really feel. But it's like, a lot of times you feel many things. You can just access what you want to be tapping into.
3 tangible ways to start rewiring our brains for more optimism. Okay. You've already done some of these, but I want it again.
Take action, gratitude, and connect with relationships. In the end, it's always good to connect with relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what about, I guess I have a lot of I have a lot of overwhelmed people in my life. Yeah. Like, it just, people are overwhelmed. What about people that are just like, if they're listening to this and they've gotten this far, and they're like, I just have this negative record in my head. I used to have this sponsor and program that used to say, like, our habits and our thoughts are like cornrows, like, in our brains. And the more you say them, think them, do them, like, the deeper those cornrows, like, get ingrained. Yeah. And I do think that, like, negativity and pessimism can kind of be like that. Yeah. But it can also just be, like, draining, like, sad when you're just can't connect to that positive voice. Yeah. Like, anecdotally, have you ever heard stories about stories about anybody that was able to, like, get out of there with something?
Well, one thing that a lot of people do, and I think you've talked about this many times, is just, like, controlling your inputs, controlling your environment. Because a lot of times through social media, we put ourselves into this environment which ignites our pessimism, or makes us feel overwhelmed. So getting control of that. I'm a big fan of actually reading, like, newspapers and magazines, physical things that have a beginning, middle, and an end. And they just don't scroll and scroll and scroll. Because you mentioned this earlier, like, being well informed is important. Like, that's a value that we all need to be civically informed. But like, if I read the paper and the newspaper in the morning, I feel like I'm informed, but I'm not just, like, hours and hours and hours of, that's the algorithm just giving you that intermittent reinforcement. And then also the people that you're around. Now, I would never say, like, cut somebody out because they're negative, because we have people. One of my secrets of adulthood is we care for many people we don't particularly care for. And sometimes we have people in our life who, we don't maybe enjoy their energy and they're important. But you do want to think about, like, am I cultivating relationships and putting myself in circumstances where I am feeling that? Like, a group exercise class is a place where people come together, it's energetic, there's often, like, music, you see the same people, so you're, like, forming these kind of little relationships, even if they're not your best friends. So you want to think about that too, like what are, or even just the thing like, oh, I'm really overwhelmed at work because it's just visually too stimulating, or it's too noisy, or I'm constantly like trying to work in this coffee shop and it's so noisy, it's making me bonkers, or whatever it is.
Do you feel that optimism gets easier for people to access over time, or?
Oh, what an interesting question. I don't know, because it's also partly what's going on in your own circumstances and in the world.
Totally.
So it's not all self-generated for sure.
If someone is more naturally pessimistic than naturally optimistic, do those people need to approach optimism or any of those like 3 tangible things in a different way, a more gentle way, a more backdoor way, or is it kind of the same?
I think it's the same. I think that they would just need to like do it in the way that's right for them. And I don't think everybody always ends up in the same place. Some people are just much more like, they just have a much, with happiness in general, about 50% is genetically determined. And then 10 to 20% is things like life circumstances, like age, health, marital status, income, things like that. And then all the rest is very much your conscious thoughts and actions. So some of it you can change, some of it you can't, and some of it is just what's going on that you're responding to. Sometimes it's it's hard. It would be very illogical not to have a little bit of pessimism mixed in with your optimism. Like you say, it's a nuance. There's nuance.
Gotta have both. It's not either or.
It's not either or. It's non-binary.
Gretchen, that was such a slay. That was such a mic drop, but we have one more thing that we're going to do right now, which I'm so excited for. Secrets of Adulthood.
Yes.
10th book.
Yes.
Gretchen, that's, you guys.
Thank you.
Give it up. If you're driving, don't take your hands off the wheel, but that's incredible. Congratulations on 10th book.
Yeah.
I wish we knew what that was called. Like sextuple, like octuple,
like decade. I don't know.
It's so major.
It's the daffodil.
It's like the doctorate book.
Right. Yeah.
It's major.
Yeah. I should get you get the degree.
So Secrets of Adulthood, if you have just fallen in love with Gretchen in the last 45 minutes, it's out on April 1st. 2025, if you're listening to this in the future.
Yes.
But it's out now. She did the audiobook. What was, with no spoilers, but was there something about this book that just really blew your mind?
It was so I just was trying to distill all the secrets of adulthood that I'd learned into just little sentences, and that was just so interesting and creative. Like accept yourself and expect more from yourself. That took me months to write that and to understand that. So it resonated with me right away. Yeah.
So basically the format of this book is like small, it's like little bite-sized secrets of adulthood.
Most are 1 or 2 sentences, and then a few are like little stories or like a paragraph. But the idea is that it's just, you would flip through it, or like you're trying to make a decision. So you would, sometimes one sentence can change your life. Like one insight can unlock everything for you. So, and that's happened to me many times in my life. So I was trying to write a book where it might do that for somebody.
Gretchen, I love that you did that. I also just remembered one more thing. So Solid Core, I'm obsessed. That's my group Pilates place. They have this badge thing on there where it's like 1 week streak, 2 week streak, 3 week streak. And then it's like the day streaks. And then you can get a different badge for like multiple gyms, or like you went to multiple teachers.
Okay.
These bags got me triggered, honey. Or the badges. I'm like, how many other badges can I get?
Yes.
How many other streaks can I do? I literally was looking at my calendar because I was like, okay, the week streak. I know I'm going to lose my day streak when I go to England. But maybe I could like keep my week streak as long as I go on a Sunday and another Sunday.
Right.
What's about streaks that makes me so wanting to do a streak?
Well,
is that a compulsive thing? I know it's not an optimism thing, but
the streak is complicated because every medicine can become poison, right? So streaks are really powerful because streaks really do make people want to keep a streak. They want to keep it going. But there is a point where wanting to keep a streak can crowd out things that are more important, or like you need to take a day off so your body can recover, but you don't, so you push and then you get into a bad place. So it's one thing to like keep a streak going for 1,000 days with flossing, but something like going to the gym, or when it's really distorting your behavior, like, oh, I can't take this flight to London, I have to take that flight because otherwise I'll miss a class. It's like, then it's starting to really affect how you're living your life. So I think you want to use streaks in a positive way, but mindfully take breaks from streaks. Did you do that? Did you schedule a flight so that you could get to a class? Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You did.
More than one.
It's good. But just say, I can mindfully decide not to do this day.
And I already told myself that if I miss the one on Sunday, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
intentionally,
Yeah.
optimistically.
Yeah.
If I lose my week streak, I'm fine with losing the day streak. That week streak, honey, I want that week streak.
And to qualify for a week, do you have to do it once or do you have to do it?
Just once.
Just one. Okay.
Like once in the week.
So that seems
because
more...
I was going to be gone from like a Sunday to a Sunday. So I was like...
Oh, and then you have jet lag and all that.
But I think I'll get to go on the Sunday and then I'll go like the next Monday. So that I would have qualified for the week on the Sunday and then I'll just do the next week on the Monday. It'll be fine.
So one thing I always remind myself is because I am an all or nothing person myself, so I 100% understand. But what we do most days matters more than what we do once in a while.
That's so true.
And so if you've got a massive streaks going and you're exercising a lot, like you don't want to let it just get into your head and mess with you.
It's also though, I think that because like on the app, there's like this, like it says badges and there's these, it's also like, it's triggering my collection part.
Yeah.
Like I love to like collect a bag, collect a rock. Like I love a collection.
Experts.
Those little Monopoly, like remember the Monopoly on the McDonald's when you were little? Like those little, like, you know, collecting a thing is like, I just love a collection. I don't know what that's about.
The smartest minds in the world are figuring you out and knowing how to push your buttons, and they are.
And they beep beep, honey. Gretchen, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on Getting Better.
Thank you.
And stick around for our outro, guys, to see what I'm curious about now and what we learned. How much do we love Gretchen? Love getting to meet her in real life. That was so much fun. She's not in the room with us anymore, just so you know. It's just us girls. Well, I guess Gretchen's also a gorgeous woman, so whatever. It's just us. Okay, this is what I'm curious about now. We ended on those streaks. I'm really curious about streaks and compulsivity. Like what's the mental tie-in with compulsivity and like streaks, collecting things, addiction, recovery, like all of this? How can we recover from like compulsivity? How can we recover from compulsivity? Like, holy shit. Like, because your girl's compulsive. I actually just had an impulse spending relapse that Tori Dunlap would not be proud of me about, which the impulsivity. What the fuck? Why am I so impulsive? ADHD. Also curious about that. Why is ADHD ruining my life? I'm also curious about like, how do people who are really pessimistic or stuck in a negativity loop, how do those people affect us? Like, or not that I'm not that person sometimes, because I'm sure my negativity does affect people sometimes. Yeah, but like, how does being around someone who's really negative affect you if you're trying to be more positive? Or you're trying, just I'm curious about how negative people affect us. I thought the key takeaways from this episode, though, are taking action can look really different to everybody. Like, if you're really depressed or you're really in a negative space, taking action doesn't have to be like doing the thing that you know you probably needed to do. But like if you really needed to get a therapist, but you haven't wanted to find one, or like if it's a really big goal, doing that does not have to be taking the action. It can be a smaller thing and you still get to feel good about that. So small steps really lead to bigger healing. I also loved when Gretchen said that it's not what you do sometimes, or what you do every day or most often means more than what you do sometimes. So that's important. If you feel like really, really negative and you might bite someone's head off, go to sleep. Get some sleep. You might just sleep deprivation's a hell of a drug. And that people who are happier are more likely to engage in the problems of the world. Like, if you really beat people down and you really just police them so much, police their language, police their activism, police their platform, they're not going to want to help. So that's not only true of like public people, that's true of anybody. So be kinder to people if you want the world to be a better place, because if we're just going to jump down everybody's throat, it's not going to make them very active. So I hereby retract what I said about Nicki Minaj in 2018 on Twitter. I still think about it, but I get it. But I'm just saying, you guys, seriously, I know the temptation of like wanting to say something negative because you feel like you know more. You feel like this person didn't think of that thing, but really you're being pessimistic and you're assuming the worst of someone, which makes that person less likely to engage. And if we want people to get off the sidelines and actually give a shit, we need to actually literally give people the benefit of the doubt. We got to give people a chance, because I do think that what Gretchen said is right. Research shows that optimism can help us heal. It can help us be healthier, can help us have better communities. So it is something we want to investigate. And I hope that you got something from this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing in my journey, honey. I hope you all felt as inspired as I did. I learned so much about optimism, learned so much about growth. And just remember, we are in this together, even in different circumstances, even in different boats, but we are still in this together. So until next time, let's keep on growing, let's keep on learning, and I'll see you next time on Getting Better.